afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This webinar is brought to you through IDRA's Read-Alouds Leadership to Achieve Greater Student Success project, which is an EIR grant from the Department of Ed. It's led by me, Dr. Nilka Avilés. IDRA provided coaching to school leadership teams who feel the need for teacher capacity in social and emotional learning strategies. In this webinar, myself and consultants Jeanne, Cantu, and Gerald will present the strategy of using interactive read-alouds. Students can read about and hear how book characters respond to different behavioral and emotional situations that may be similar to their own. And educators will then be able to select books to promote social emotional learning in their classrooms. For this last 2 years, we have been unprecedented due to the pandemic, and students' lives have been turned upside down, as you know. So they have experienced a lot of stress, fear, grief, and uncertainties. So students have been placed in a variety of learning environments, and not all have been effective in developing social, emotional, and academic skills. So according to the National Survey of Children's Health, 47% of children in the US have had at least one adverse childhood experience, which increases a child's need for trauma-informed instructional practices that support the child's overall success. And according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, 140,000 children in the US experienced the death of a parent or grandparent or caregiver due to COVID-19. So children losing caregivers have an increased risk of short-term trauma and lifelong adverse consequences. So their social, emotional, academic needs call upon teachers and schools to recognize this and educate the whole learners. I'm going to share the screen to bring up the actual PowerPoint that we will be looking at. And to begin, the title of the book, Strategies for Using Books to Promote Social and Emotional Learning. Here's the agenda. And in the agenda, I'm going to tell you exactly all the things that we're going to cover in this activity. So what is social and emotional learning and why it is important? What kinds of skills does SEL help students develop? Why do students need to develop social and emotional learning skills? How does SEL support equity? How can using books promote SEL? What are interactive read-alouds? How can interactive read-alouds help students develop SEL skills? And how do you integrate read-aloud into the classroom? And then what kinds of extension activities can students do following an interactive read-aloud?
So here are our students. Students, especially young children, are just learning the social and emotional skills they will need as they grow older. They need to learn to express their social and emotional needs and how to express their needs and how to address the challenges they will face in life. Teachers can provide lessons in social and emotional learning, especially through interactive activities such as interactive read-alouds. In this presentation, we will discuss SEL and ways that teachers can use quality children's literature, and that is picture books that contain authentic characters, realistic problems, and possible resolutions to introduce and practice these skills. Picture books can serve as models for managing different emotions. So on the next slide, we're asking you to look at the pictures and in the chat, jot down some of the emotions that you observe in those pictures. Be accurate though in your identification of those feelings. If you think a child is sad, why might that child be sad? Is it because he or she is lonely or worried or discouraged or hungry? So Nilka, if you'll go back to the previous slide, we'll let people in the chat indicate what they observe in this slide. Okay, if you'll go ahead and type the emotions that you observe.
Any ideas from the participants?
I don't see anything yet. Okay. Yes, Xenia, go ahead and type there in the chat. They will give you. Okay, Xenia says that she sees frustration, sadness, loneliness. Okay. We have someone else, confusion, frustration, sadness, but also a smile, fear, disappointment. Great. Okay. Thank you for sharing. We need to teach students to understand their moods and feelings and teach them the vocabulary to identify those feelings. This is the foundation of children being able to regulate their emotions and successfully interact with others. Okay, thank you.
I'd like to say those are some really good answers shown from just pictures. You can determine those emotions of students. So we've got some people with us today who understand how to look at a child and be able to see what they see as an emotion. Especially the young man that had his head down by his locker. That one really stuck with me. And so I thank the participants because those are some really good responses.
If you look at this quote that is here, in terms of social emotional learning definition, I'd like to give you a couple of minutes for you to read it. And then I'd like for you to also indicate in the chat what jumps out at you.
Okay, from this definition, what do you think is significant? What do you believe in from the definition on this slide? You can answer in the chat.
Okay, so we have any comments?
Yes, we have one, and this participant said empathy with a capital EMPATHY, exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. You know, and she is exactly correct. Thank you, Xenia.
So to summarize, SEL is the process through which we learn to recognize and manage emotions, care about others, like you said, empathy, right? Make good decisions, behave ethically and responsibly, and develop positive relationships and avoid negative behaviors. So there's 5 components of SEL. The first one is self-awareness. It's identifying one's emotions, right? Demonstrated honesty and integrity, having a growing mindset. So a student may ask, what are my thoughts and feelings? What causes those thoughts and feelings? How can I express my thoughts and feelings respectfully? The next one is self-management. So managing one's emotions, setting personal and collective goals, using planning and organizational skills. So a student may ask, what different responses can I have to an event? How can I respond to an event as constructively and responsibly as possible? The next one is social awareness. That's taking others' perspective and demonstrating empathy and compassion, understanding and expressing gratitude. So a student may ask, how can I better understand other people's thoughts and feelings? How can I better understand why people feel and think the way they do? Relationship skills, this one is very, very critical and important, right? Communicating effectively, developing positive relationships, resolving conflict constructively, showing leaderships in groups. So a student may ask, how can I adjust my actions so that my interactions with different people turn out to be well? Or how can I communicate my expectations to other people? How can I communicate with other people to understand and manage their expectations of me? And last but not least, responsible decision making. This one says what a student may ask could be, what consequences will my actions have on myself and that of others? How do you make choices, or how do my choices align with my values? So why is SEL important? Emotional well-being is important, right? Like we talk about in terms of empathy. All students need to feel a sense of belonging and respect for who they are. So SEL is critical in making sure that students, for example, it takes into account the whole child and promotes a holistic view of education. It assists students in managing their emotions. It encourages students to set and achieve positive goals and make responsible and caring decisions. And it helps students develop healthy identities. It also teaches students to feel and show empathy for others, like you just mentioned in the chat. So by using children's literature, students have the opportunity to do what they cannot do in real life, but they can become thoroughly involved in the inner lives of others, better understand them, and eventually become more aware of themselves. So that's the beauty of this. As students read books, they can identify with the characters, and then also check their own emotions and feelings as they identify with the characters of the books. And as students establish and maintain positive relationships, as we are working with the social emotional learnings. So why do students need to develop SEL skills? Here's another quote by Jones and Doolittle that says, SEL matters for important life outcomes like success in school, college, entry and completion, and later earnings. SEL involves children's ability to learn about and manage their own emotions and interactions in ways that benefit themselves and others, and that help children and youth succeed in schooling, the workplace, relationship, and citizenship. So looking at this code, what are some takeaways from it? What comes to your mind? If you can please jot it on the chat. What comes to mind? What are some takeaways? Anything?
Zinnia says that it's a way to learn and manage emotions.
Excellent. It's about managing our own emotions, right? So that then we can relate better with others.
Okay, I think that's the only response we have so far.
Thank you. Well, the next slide has to do with how does SEL support equity? How does it support equity? And it says here, equity means acknowledging that not all students are the same. You know, sometimes people use the term equal and equity interchangeably. And it doesn't mean the same, right? Equity means acknowledging that they're not all the same. Providing equitable opportunities for developing young people's social, emotional, academic growth requires intentional calibration to each student's and school's individual strength and needs. And that is very, very important, specifically when we're dealing with students in schools where there's a lot of marginalized students, where there's a lot of poverty, and students that are underserved or underrepresented. So we have identified reasons why it is important for students to develop SEL skills. So how does SEL support equity and excellence? The first thing that we can think about is it is a powerful lever for creating caring, just, inclusive, and healthy communities that support all individuals in reaching their fullest potential. It is also relevant for all students in all schools, and it affirms diverse cultures and backgrounds. Equity and excellence refer to every student across race, ethnicity, family income levels, learning abilities, home language, immigration status, gender identity, sexual orientation, and other factors, which are engaging in high quality educational opportunities and environments that best promote their healthy social, emotional, and academic development. So this is very, very important.
We've established how, or we reviewed the definition of SEL. We've established why it's important. And we're going to move now into how books, the use of books in the classroom, can promote SEL. Students are never too old to enjoy reading books and to benefit from the impact of their content. We know that hearing a book read aloud is a powerful experience for that listener. Students hear and see real-life examples of abstract concepts such as anger, sadness, loneliness, alienation, and disengagement. They can empathize and apply the concepts that they've experienced in the books to their own lives and see how the characters handle similar emotions. We know books can promote patience, gratitude, kindness, empathy, integrity, respect, compassion, making choices, and a variety of other feelings and emotions. In the next slide, you see pictures of teachers reading to students, and I want you to notice how engaged the students are. So we're going to bring SEL to life now by using picture books. And we're talking about quality children's books. They can reinforce SEL in an existing language arts curriculum. Many children or many picture books have children as their main characters to whom children can relate, or the character might be an animal that has a childlike quality or personality. And in the picture books, we see characters who would have similar challenges that students face in their own lives. Teachers can teach the books through interactive read-alouds. Sharing high quality literature with young children provides a range of language to help them identify, label, and express emotions. Remember earlier on, we said that children have to be able to identify their emotions first. This high quality children's literature, when it contains authentic characters, realistic problems, and possible resolutions, validate children's emotions while offering models for managing strong emotions. Sharing such literature allows for the discussion of emotion-provoking conflicts and events that may mirror those routinely experienced by children, helping foster children's resiliency and coping skills. On the next slide, we have the quote, actually, that I just read. And with this, I would like to distinguish between a read-aloud and an interactive read-aloud. Many classrooms have in their curriculum or during the day where the teacher is reading a book to the children. It's a read-aloud. And there may not be a lot of interaction between the reading of the book, the teacher reading the book, and the students. In a typical classroom, we have read-alouds, perhaps after bringing the kids in after recess or after lunch. Teachers model fluent reading with the read-aloud. They introduce new concepts. They introduce new vocabulary, but there is not a high degree of interactivity. So we're going to focus primarily on interactive read-alouds, where the teacher reads a selected text, and the text is determined ahead of time, reads it, could be to the whole class, could be to a small group of children, and students are actively engaged in the listening. During this interactive read aloud, the teacher pauses selectively for discussion. The interactive read alouds are purposeful and planned. Some of the benefits of an interactive read aloud are, first of all, it gives children experience with language, okay? They increase their background knowledge of a topic or a concept, and it helps them understand those universal concepts like kindness, empathy, respect. It also promotes discussion about topics in critical ways. So we're looking here at critical thinking. It encourages children to be critical thinkers. It also encourages students to focus on those important ideas that I mentioned earlier and reflect on them. And very importantly, the discussion that ensues from an interactive read aloud builds classroom community and also motivates students to read. We then talk about how to integrate an interactive read aloud in your classroom. As I said earlier, most classrooms already have a time for a read aloud. So we're looking at making that read aloud more interactive. Read alouds are already a part of many teachers' classroom routines and instruction. And those social emotional learning skills can be incorporated into that learning instruction. So we choose books to model and teach the core values explicitly, those universal concepts that we want the children to become familiar with. We choose books that students connect to their lives, to their experiences, and their backgrounds, and the challenges in their lives. Books should be culturally relevant. So we want to make sure there are characters from diverse cultures and diverse backgrounds.
Jeanne, may I add one there?
Yeah.
When we're looking at that diverse backgrounds, I think it's also important to many of our students in San Antonio and the area to have writers who reflect them. So again, the situations can be there, but I think it's also good to have that variety and have the children aware that there are outstanding writers in this country that are just like them and have
Exactly.
Stories of childhood that can be just like them.
Exactly.
And that's going to make them feel much more adept at discussing or doing whatever else we're going to ask them to do later.
Definitely. Thank you, Gerald. And most importantly, we do the interactive read aloud, but the beauty, the value is the time we take afterwards to discuss and reflect on the read aloud as we implement them in the classroom. So how can interactive read alouds help students develop those SEL skills? Well, first of all, the teacher and students together construct meaning. They discuss, they construct meaning of that text. They can analyze the character's feelings, connect the character's feelings with their own. They learn from the character's experience and then can apply it to their own lives. When a book is selected that benefits the special needs of certain students, it may help them feel valued, but we shouldn't call out that we chose this book because of a particular student or a particular group of students. So for an interactive read aloud, the teacher may differentiate that instruction by grouping students. So as we said earlier, the interactive read aloud could be done with a small group or a larger group of students. And then we have follow-up activities to reinforce the theme of the text. On the next slide, we look about planning and designing an interactive read aloud. So number one, the teacher picks a book based upon the concept that he or she wants to introduce or reinforce. The text is intentionally selected. And if a teacher is not certain what book might be appropriate, check with the school librarian or do an internet search for an appropriate book. Secondly, the teacher needs to read the book several times to ensure understanding of it and to determine any stopping points for doing a think aloud or for asking selective questions. And again, we're talking about just a few questions. We don't want for it to be so many questions that it distracts the students from understanding what's going on in the story. There may be some vocabulary words that the students might not be familiar with. Perhaps they would be pre-taught or taught on the run. And finally, we've got the big P word, plan. Plan before reading activities, plan during reading activities, and plan after reading activities. So for example, a before reading activity might be what Gerald suggested, calling students' attention to the author, the title of the book, the author, who wrote the book, what was his or her background. The student may want to make a prediction on the book based upon the title of the book or the cover. During reading, the teacher may selectively ask a few questions to help to guide the children's comprehension, the students' comprehension of what they're hearing. We ask students to make connections as they're reading. And finally, after reading, we're still asking students to make connections. A connection could be a text-to-self connection, a text-to-text connection, or a text-to-world connection. Students could do a variety of activities. And in fact, Gerald is going to discuss those activities in the next slide.
When we look here, one of my favorite times as a teacher is what to do after a reading. There are different avenues that are available to all veteran teachers. But again, as an ELAR teacher, I loved having my students write about what they've read. So when we look at this, to get to writing, we don't just write out of the blue. We're looking at relevant classroom discussions. You could have students who can talk about it before they write about it. And it gives them things to write about. Something was important to someone else in the class. Another student could say, wow, I agree, that's something that is important in this story. So looking at that discussion and then how the teacher controls those discussions, whether it's going to be partners or small groups or the whole class. And that really takes an adept teacher to coordinate, because I had 39 years with 8th graders, but they loved to talk about something that really got their interest. So we could do a turn and talk, a think, pair, share, or we could have that larger question given by the teacher. And Jeanne said the planning is very important. You have to plan what those discussion questions will be before the students are asked them. So we've got the reader responding. It could be any way, having them do a short response. What do you think? How do you feel? We like to keep the questions open-ended. We don't like it just saying, is this or that what happened? That would be too easy for the child, and I would think that would probably embarrass them in its simplicity. But you're looking at reader response. And I found in my 52 years of working with children in ELAR, I never had a child come up that didn't have something to say. I figured my job was to help them shape it, not come up with it. So we've got reader response. The teacher could be so formal as to write it into a writing prompt. And I know that sometimes we hear prompt and we think of a particular test. You can word the prompt how you wish, but it's going to get the students started. Because if the students care about the story, they're not going to have a problem with a writing prompt. They've got something to say. We do have students in the class that come with varying talents. So if this were a possible project led after the reading, after the discussion, you have some students who would like to sketch it. They may like to choose a character, or I've seen some really good ones from 8th graders where they chose the setting and they drew it. So there's ways to respond that can even go beyond words. They can be more pictures themselves. So when we look at that activity, it can also be something dramatic. It can be something with role playing. You could do a reader's theater. I've had students work on that. So if you've got time for small groups to do it, what we're looking at is what kind of an extension activity could first meet their interest, and second, give them an avenue to discuss what they've read, what they've heard. And they would feel more accomplished by finishing the activity. And it often shows wonderful depths from the students. So when we look at this, we're looking at, okay, this is a segue into our key book, and I turn it back over to Jeanne.
A book that we'd like to use an example of an interactive read aloud. One of our favorite books by one of our favorite authors is Each Kindness. The author is Jacqueline Woodson. And I won't take the time right now to read the entire book to you, but I'd like to give you a summary of the book. And then we'll talk about some possible discussion questions or activities that could follow. So in this book, one of the main characters is Chloe, an elementary school student who is a pretty happy girl. She enjoys school. She has two best friends, Kendra and Sophie. And those three girls spend a lot of time together during lunch and on the playground, sharing and laughing and just generally doing girl things. Chloe, however, is not open to making new friends, which becomes clear when a new student joins the class. The new girl, Maya, tries to make friends with the girls in the class, but they refuse to accept her. She continues to reach out, inviting the girls to play jacks with her. And Maya even brings some other toys to school, hoping that the girls will play with her. One day, Maya does not return to school. And the children's teacher, Miss Albert, gives a lesson on kindness. She drops a small stone into a big bowl of water and explains that every kind thing done goes out like a ripple into the world. She then invites the children to drop the stone into the bowl and say one kind thing that they have done. Everyone except Chloe has something to say. She promises herself, though, that she will greet Maya when Maya comes back to school. But Maya never returns to school. Days pass, and finally, Miss Albert informs the class that Maya has moved away. Chloe is filled with regret as she realizes that she has missed her chance to show any kindness to Maya. Okay, Gerald, what are some discussion questions that might follow this reading?
Reading like this, with a story like this, can affect any student, no matter what age. They could remember how it was if it was from an earlier time in elementary school. But what we had mentioned earlier in the planning is very important. So getting the discussion going is equally important. We're looking at it being purposeful, and we're looking at it something the students can react to and then make it their own question. We like them to be open-ended because a yes or no is not much of a question at all. And students would often wonder, well, why can't we just write about, was this good or not good? There's more to it. And that's where the teacher tries to get the students looking more into the nuance of not only what happened, but possibilities of why do you think it happened? When we look at what happened to Maya, we often wonder, looking back at the girls in the class, all the way up to the ending of the book, and why do you think that'd be a really good question for a student? It could speak to the students in different ways, but it's why do you think those students were not nice to Maya when she was trying to be nice to them? This could be a group discussion, large group, small, however you want to model it. But we're looking at that sort of question on, well, what were the other students doing? We're not judging. We're not saying, oh, this person was bad and this person was trying. But we're looking at, well, what do you think as a student? And then another question could even get more depth in it. And I like that Jeanne had it brought up in the summary, but when the teacher, Miss Albert, talked about things that you do can go out into the world like a ripple, and then showing the students how dropping a pebble into water, the rippling effect keeps going and going and going. And some students may need some assistance with other discussers if we're going to ask, what did she mean by a kind act can have a million effects? And then I don't know if they're going to count all those numbers of ripples, but we're still looking at, when we have this to discuss, it's more than just, it was about Maya, it was about Chloe, it was about all the students in the class. And I really like that teacher in how she worked it out so that all the students in the class except one was understanding the ripples and the kindness and those acts of kindness. So in a discussion, when you have these types of questions, not just who said what, but why do you think that character did what she did? And that offers a lot of understanding for the students into the behaviors of the characters. And so those are discussion questions, discussion types, how you would go about it. And then we were also talking about the writing. So is that my next slide?
Yes.
Okay. So when we look at students writing follow-ups, okay, we go back to Ms. Albert again, brilliant teacher in my respects. And that quote that I was talking about when we were saying for the discussion in the class, if we're going to write about it, I really do believe the students are going to need more than just a large group class discussion. And then here's paper and you're going to answer this question of what did she mean? It's going to take some life experience. It's going to take some understanding of behaviors of others without looking at judging. And so do we have another bullet? Clever students and really adept writers might want to choose, well, what would this story be like if it was from Maya's point of view? I do know that in working in tutorials and with students, points of view may not be the easiest concept for them. They don't have to rewrite the whole story, but how would Maya have reacted? And so again, the student is thinking more than, well, I know what Chloe was thinking, but what about Maya and how she was thinking? And then you could also write a letter. Some teachers find wonderful success with students writing letters, and it could be from Maya to her classmates. I don't think Maya is going to unload on all the others, but that's my personal opinion. But if we look at how can we get the students responding and following up and extending the lesson and the learning, it definitely gives them more writing opportunities. Do I get another bullet? Whoa, okay. And then asking students, this one can get really touchy. We don't want them saying, well, so-and-so acts just like Chloe. That's not what we would ever bring this up for. When Jeannie had said, you do look at these events, are these what happened, the events of the story you look at before you ever relate it to the classroom. And so if you've got a Chloe in your classroom, I don't know if you'd want to read that story, because then they'd all say, well, it's all about Chloe. And so thinking as another student in the class thinks and getting into what was happening with her and would you have been friends with? What could you have said to your other friends? So again, that's getting the students into role playing, which we offered earlier. But when they're writing, they could be looking at how would you just write something briefly. Doesn't have to be rewrite the whole story. But again, it gets them into thinking as another student might think. Next slide. Jeannie and I have talked about certain books. And again, Jacqueline Woodson is right up there into the top. That is a wonderful story. You got to be sensitive with it in elementary school. But with older students, you might ask, well, did that ever happen? Could you identify? When we look at this list, it's not complete and it's not our best list of the best. No, not necessarily, but it does have some of those criteria we had talked about earlier. And the first one was an earlier work by a prolific writer, Matt de la Peña. And so that's listed there. But what I like of his is down further, the last stop on Market Street. And I've got it right here on the table next to me. Beautiful, beautiful story. And again, if you could see this book, you go, oh, wow, it's an award winner. So when teachers get together and talk about quality literature, there's a group that judges the best literature for young audiences in a given year. The book came out 2015 and it won the Newbery Award. It's a beautiful story of a boy and his Nana, and they take a bus trip on a Sunday. Sounds like not a complex story. He's got lots of questions, but Nana is not giving him just answers. She's pointing out other people on their bus route and why certain things don't happen, like with other friends. And so this one got an honor for the Caldecott. The illustrations are beautiful, and the illustrations in the story go really well together. And then Matt De La Peña, in my opinion, almost outdid himself by 2018. And he did a book called Love. And you're going, well, love, but it's how it's presented, how the illustrations work out, again, carrying the thought. And it's actually a story of a young girl in a family. And at the end, she's going to set off on her own. All her relatives are saying, good luck, good luck, good luck. And at the end, she doesn't need luck. What she leaves here with is love. Beautiful book, and I have used this with elementary students, and they loved it, especially that the author was Matt De La Peña. Another one that's not on the list, but is an excellent source for young readers and actually readers of any age, is Sandra Cisneros' House on Mango Street. Classic stories of growing up in Chicago with some really interesting neighbors, friends, and incidents. And this very past year, we were in a school where the students in 6th grade were covering the story 11. Beautiful story of a young girl with lots of emotions on her 11th birthday. Nice way to use with students, with student writers, and it's fun for the teacher to assist with how it's all presented. So, yes.
And I would like to add that the list of books on the slide are not grade specific.
Right.
You've talked about using them with elementary students. They can be used with middle school,
yes.
with high school students just as well. In fact, I've used them with college students, and they're just as effective with college students. So they're not grade specific.
That's it.
The other thing I might ask is, I wonder if any of our participants might have suggest a book that they think would be a great book to use for an interactive read aloud.
That'd be wonderful.
So if any of our participants have a book that they would recommend, if they would put it in the chat, that would just add to our list as well.
That'd help us out. We like that.
Yeah, well, we'll help each other.
Yes.
Okay, let's maybe Nilka, we can give everybody just a few seconds to see if they want to put a book.
This is the book that needs to be on that list.
Yeah.
Oh, we got to.
Okay, Emiliano, you're driving. We don't want you to type while you're type anymore while you're driving or participate anymore.
We know you've got a good suggestion.
I was just reading this book when, I don't know if you can see it.
What is it?
What's the title?
It's called Social and Emotional Learning for Picture Book Readers.
Oh,
and it has a bunch of basically an entire lesson plan.
really?
There's inquiry lessons, and there's, some creative little crafts, and there's also some writing uh, prompts that go with the books. And
Oh,
what I
the
love
prompts
about
are
it
available. How wonderful.
is that it gives you picture books over the different topics like problem solving, building relationships, working, teamwork, um, sense of purpose, recognizing and managing feelings, and engaging ethically. And it gives a list of different titles and picture books to use with it. So I don't know if you can see it, but
Yeah. Who is the author, or is it an NCTE book, or who published
it's
it?
an AASL standards-based based learning
Right.
book. It's by Maureen. I'll write the author in
Oh,
the
thank you.
chat.
Excellent. The
Thank
chat
you.
is great.
But I want to suggest that your librarian will probably either have this, know of this, but is a great resource to help classroom teachers find books that are relevant to social emotional learning, because books are their business, right? So
Exactly.
That's
your
wonderful.
librarian is a really good person to collaborate. But let me
Right.
write this, the title and the author in the chat.
Wonderful.
Good.
Thank you, Zinnia.
Thank you, very good. Anybody else? Any other suggestions?
Okay, graphic novel, The Best We Could Do. Could you tell us a little bit about The Best We Could Do? The participant who put that down, I'm writing the title, The Best We Could Do. Okay, thank you, Zinnia, for posting that. We'll have to buy it.
Yes. Put it on our must-buy list.
Are there any other titles, either a professional book or a picture book, that you think would be helpful or beneficial when we're talking about interactive read-alouds for social emotional learning? Okay, we say it that the best we could do is a family story of immigration, identity, and more, beautifully illustrated. Might be better for an older reader. Okay, that's okay.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you for posting that.
Mauricio said, Benjamin Allaire Signs, the dog who loves tortillas. Then Grandma Fina and her wonderful umbrellas, and A Perfect Season for Dreaming. That's awesome.
wow.
Those are good. Yes. And another author. So
Yeah. Okay, I'm jotting those down to Grandma Fina and her wonderful umbrella.
A lot of stories that relate to families, to some of real world experiences that children are living. It's so important because they can identify with those. And,
Well,
and
yeah, exactly. It looks like they're, as we said earlier, we want the books to be relevant, to be culturally relevant. And it looks like the titles that you've suggested.
beautiful, wonderful suggestions.
A
Yes.
Perfect Season for Dreaming. Okay,
excellent.
great. Okay, thank you. If you think any more, post them. Okay, go ahead, Nilka.
As a closing activity, we have, if you can put this in the chat, or you might want to actually share out loud as well.
Yeah, we could do that.
What are 3 things that you learned today? If you can say 3 things that jump out at you, that struck out to you, what are some things that you learned today?
Or maybe that you already knew and just affirmed or confirmed what you already knew.
Exactly.
Okay, if you don't want to type, perhaps you could, affirm that SEL is too important to not incorporate every day.
Mhm.
Amen to that.
That's very good.
That's right.
Definitely, definitely.
Especially,
Zinnia.
like I said, especially and more so, even though now we're, school is beginning to take like it was in the past, but these past 2 years really have impacted everybody in a lot of ways. Like I said at the beginning, and even teachers, right? How you have to overcome so many barriers and challenges. You know, I was a teacher, I was an academic dean and a principal, and my hat off to all of you, because you were on the trenches when COVID hit and all the things that you had to adjust and modify, and sometimes it was actually on a daily basis. But now that children are coming back, you know, we still have that there are all that many gaps because of the different, the time spent that was not in school, that had affected them academically. So now, more importantly, how do we bring experiences in the classroom that are gonna inspire them to be better readers and to be better writers? And that's really crucial, to help them develop writing and reading skills, which are so important.
Yeah. And I see Zinnia's comment that even adults, we who are
Yes.
parents, we who are teachers, need those SEL lessons and learning in our daily lives. It's pertinent, it's relevant to us as adults as well as to the children, the students
Yeah,
that
and
we
let
serve.
the children know that the SEL is important for their teachers in the room. So yeah, it's not something that teacher says is good for them. It's good for everyone.
And you know, being a former principal also as a leader, as an instructional leader of a campus, is also so important for an administrator to also provide support to the adults in the campus. Because if we, there's a book that is called "If you don't teach, if you don't feed the teacher, they'll eat the kids." And it's a really good book. I use it in my classes at UTSA. And I tell the administrators, you know, as I work with them through coaching and mentoring, that it is important not only to take, yes, we have to take care of the children, because if they're not there, we don't have jobs, right? And they are the essence of what we do. But also, as principals, we have to take care of the teachers as well, and also the parents. How do we support everyone? And how do we help everyone grow in all ways? So thank you so much for your participation. I have other things that I want to also share here. What were two things that you liked from the presentation? What were two things that jump out to you that you liked?
Can I say something, although I can't type?
Yes,
Of course.
please.
Okay. Yeah, okay. No, thank you for the wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed it. I think that SEL, when we ascribe to it, it allows a special place for students to become part of the overall teaching learning environment. And like you were saying, the lady that was just speaking, because I don't have the video on, it allows for teachers as well as for parents in the community to be part of the whole teaching and learning environment that we want to create for our students. So I think SEL is very important when we want to reach out to all our students and the community as well. So I thank you all for that presentation. It's really nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now that you said that, it's important to also, since we have so many life experiences, right, to have the environment, the classroom setting, the culture of the school, that you can be vulnerable, right? That you can be vulnerable, that you can share your thoughts, and how to do it in a way that that is not hurtful to others, right? This is when we know that there's a lot of bullying going on in school sometimes. So how do we teach our students also, you know, to be kind, just like Chloe learned in the book of kindness. So it is bringing this aspect of humanity, right? And
Right.
being compassionate and being empathetic. And being empathetic through the eyes of the other person, not through the eyes of my own, is important to share and teach our students.
Okay. Denise said that she's liked the specific examples of books and activities that we gave.
Very good.
Thank you.
And then we have one more thing. So one thing you are going to do to incorporate social and emotional learning lessons in your classrooms, what would be the one thing that you, even though we can do a lot of things, right, with what you learned today, what we shared, but what is one thing that really stuck out to you that you will incorporate in your lessons, in your classroom?
So it could be, what new thing will you incorporate, or
Right.
what will you continue to
And
incorporate?
continuing, because it sounds
You
like
may-
some of them will continue, yes.
Yeah, you're already doing some things. What will you continue?
For me, specifically, learn more and do more research on social emotional learning.
Good.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you, Emiliano.
Anyone else? I'm sure those of you who are already incorporating it, there's a lot of extensions here that you can, you know, take in and extend into your classrooms as well. So that will be.
I'd like to mention one thing, something that Denise wrote, and she said, ensuring that lessons are intentional and part of daily planning. And there are two key words there, intentional and planning. Those are both critical to the success of students achieving those, or learning those SEL skills in the classroom. Thank you, Denise.
And all these skill sets that students are learning really apply to their daily lives as they keep on growing up and as they become adults. So it's very important. Like Denise said, intentional and a lot of planning has to go with it.
Right.
Very good.
I think that's everybody's comments.
To end, any lingering questions or comments you would like to pose?
Will the webinar be available for us to view it later?
Yes, it's being recorded, so it will be in IDRA. Now that you mentioned that, these are some of the references that we have that help us in the development of this webinar. And we are at Intercultural Development Research Association. Here we have my email address. It's right here, Dr. Nilka Avilés. So nilka.aviles@idra.org. Any questions, any comments? To see this, you go to www.idra.org and it should be there. We have a lot of resources for teachers that are free. A lot of our practice is based on our nonprofit. We're a nonprofit organization. Our president and CEO is Selena Moreno. We are here in San Antonio on Callahan Road. And there's a lot of things that we have for teachers, like I said, and there's a lot of us that are researchers, practitioners, scholars, and we have been on the trenches doing work with school districts, providing a lot of professional development, which is one of our strands. We have 4 strands. One of them is actually research and evaluation. Another one is policy and leadership development. Another one is professional development. And then we actually create our own products. So we have programs, we have a lot of books and literature that helps education become alive and better. So we were supposed to be on the work for a few years, and a few years turned into, we're gonna celebrate our 50th anniversary in April. So lots of things to actually share and with the community. But if you, again, our phone number is right here as well. Some of us are working still. We're on a hybrid schedule. Some days in the office, some days at home. But we're just an email or a phone call away. I'm going to put on the chat my cell phone number. If anyone needs have any other questions or any other comments or any other needs that you may have, I'm putting my cell number on the chat. Anything else? Any questions? Any other comments?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, and please share the wealth of knowledge with others. Again, once you get the actual recording. You can share with other people and let us know if you have any questions or if you want, we want to talk to your principal and we can actually come to do presentations at your campus. Just let us know. We're here to serve. If there are no other questions, I would, again, thank you so much for your time. That is so valuable. And we wish you a great evening and a great rest of the week.
Likewise, thank you.
Well,